What role does faith play in your life?
Oh gosh, faith has been um, at the top of my pyramid in the very worst times in my life and in the very best times in my life. When I was at the very end of the road with right before I went to treatment, um, I used to run. I lived on Music Row in Nashville, Tennessee, and the church that I went to was 2 miles from where I used to live. And I used to say the rosary, and I would run, say the rosary all the way to this church. And I would go into this church, and there was nobody in this church. And I was really, really struggling. And I couldn't really pinpoint what it was. I didn't see it as like, this is addiction, but I felt so hopeless and so far from the person that I knew I wanted to be. And I was really disappointed in myself and what I'd become after like how I'd been raised and all these things that I'd achieved in my life. I was just really disappointed in what I had become because like I just couldn't achieve anymore. I couldn't keep a job. And I felt like my family was starting to pull away from me because I was like becoming unpleasant to be around. I was just a shell of a person. And I used to go into this church and I would light candles and I would kneel down in front of like the altar. And I would like I can remember like it would be in the summer because I went to treatment in the spring, and I would like press my arms down on the floor, and it was like this marble floor, and it was like so cold. And I would just say like, I'm sorry. You gave me so much, and I'm sorry. I don't know how I got to this point. And will you take it away from me? Will you take it away from me? Like the need to take this prescription medicine. Will you just help me like be the person that I was? And I always thought that like how God would answer that prayer for me would be, I would wake up in the morning and I wouldn't want to take these pills anymore that I knew were like destroying my life. And what I realize now is his answer to my prayer was going to that treatment center. Mm. But I mean, faith was so big for me even then. And faith was it was different because I saw God as, I knew he was loving and I knew he was going to be the person that was going to help me make the difference. But I also felt like he had to be disappointed in me too. Mm. Because I knew all the gifts that I'd been given, my singing voice and my family. I knew those were things that he had given me. You know, those were blessings that I was given. And I really believed what they said, you know, that to whom much is given, of much is required. And I knew that I'd done great things in my life. But I also knew that this was not the way that, like, this was not where I was meant to be. Squandering all the gifts that I'd been given, like living my life like this, like isolating myself from my family. And I was so far from the person that I knew I wanted to be, and then I knew that I felt like God wanted me to be. But what I know now, I don't feel like he was ever disappointed in me. I feel like that was part of my journey. Because where I'm at now, and like the book and the podcast and the way that people see me and the face of addiction looking a lot different to a lot of people that watch me on the internet, I know that was all part of the plan. And God ushered me into that part of my story, just like he placed a crown on my head, just like he had me born in Morganfield, Kentucky, and living on that little farm, being an example to my siblings and cousins, working at Bud's Country Corner and being this little country kid. It was all part of my story. And so I clung to faith then. Faith saved my life, but faith like orchestrated me into this part of my journey too. And it allowed me to be a story in the back of people's minds when they're going through addiction or when they're struggling with something or where they're standing in front of a goal and they're like, there's absolutely no way someone like me could achieve that because this happened to me. They can look at me and remember my story and be like, oh my gosh, you know that blonde girl that lives in Nashville, Tennessee on the internet that like, I think she went to rehab for 6 months after she did Miss America. Like my faith was everything. My faith saved my life. He answered my prayers. And then now my faith is, you know what I say every single day? I am so thankful for my life. I say it to my husband like every day that we wake up in this beautiful home and I look outside and I see this peony garden that I planted and I see this swimming pool and I see these 3 kids running around the backyard and riding motorcycles. I feel, not because I have to be like, here's a gratitude journal and I want to do gratitude so I can feel abundant. I feel overwhelming, overflowing gratitude every single day for my life. I do every single day. And I say to my husband, can you believe it that we got here? Because we also overcame so many things in our relationship. We broke up so many times. He dated me in active addiction. Like the week that we broke up was the week that things crashed and burned for me. And then I ended up going to treatment. He saw me at the lowest of the like, can you believe it? What the Lord has given us.
Mm.
And we've been through different sorts of challenges where we've had to cling to our faith. We've had now 5 pregnancy losses, and we've been through challenges in our relationship before we got married, and we struggled financially when we first got married. And, there were just so many things that we had to just really trust the Lord in. And like faith has played so many different roles for me, but I say thank you a lot.
Mm.
Now I just say thank you, and I can't believe it. And I say a lot because I've been given a lot now, and I know that I have a lot. And I pray the prayer that with all of this, this abundance that you have given me, do with it what you want me to do with it. Because I know you gave it to me for a reason. I mean, I look at how much you give and do and are to other people, and just how much like you give away. And I that's the next piece of it. I pray a lot. I want my faith to guide me because he's given me so much, and I want my faith to guide me into like, why did you give me this? Like, what is it that you'll have me do with this? That's what my faith is for me now too.
Do you ever doubt that God exists?
Not one single time in my whole life have I doubted. No, I always knew. Even when I was, I don't want to say frustrated or mad, but like I can still remember sometimes like when hard things would happen. I remember my first pregnancy loss, or like when my sister lost a baby. It was like her miracle baby, and she lost a baby. He was 5 weeks old. There have been times where like I was at the Vanderbilt Children's Hospital when my sister, it was during COVID that she lost her son. And we knew he had a heart defect and he would have to have a couple surgeries after he was born. And there are times in my life where, we never got to visit him in the hospital because it was right when COVID started. It was March of 2020. And they would not let us come and be there with them going through this terrible, terrible thing. Their child being on life support. And is he going to make it? Is he not? So we only got to go on the day that we knew they were going to disconnect those machines, and he was not going to, we were meeting him. We knew the day that we met him, that was the day we were saying hello and goodbye all at the same time. And there are moments like that. I can remember being in that bathroom at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. And I went onto my knees and I was like, why in the world would you take a baby? Because it was just, you don't understand why things that hard to have to happen to people that good. And there are times in my life where I ask him questions like that and like, dang it, like, why in the world would you do this, God? It doesn't make any sense. What's happening right now? I don't see the good in this, and I know you're good. And now it's been 4 years since that happened, and I can see the reason for that, even though it was really terrible and really hard, but I never doubted that he existed. And Jamie, I feel lucky for that because I feel like ever since I was a child, I'm from a very faith-filled family, but I always felt the presence of God so strongly and saw so many signs that he existed and just felt that I feel like that was a gift that he gave me that I never doubted that he existed. I never doubted that he existed. And I would be around people that really questioned their faith, and I would feel so lucky that I'd always felt that so strongly. And it wasn't like a blind faith. I see some people have a blind faith, just like, well, this is what I'm told, and this is what I read, and this is what, but I felt it in my bones.
Like you knew it.
I knew it. I knew it. I felt it. I would always ask for signs and stuff ever since I was a little girl. And I would have some of the most insane experiences where I knew he existed. And I knew that even in really hard times, like when I almost lost my life to addiction, when I watched my sister lose a baby, when I went through pregnancy losses, when I went through really hard things in my relationship and in my career, I always knew he existed. And then once I started going through hard things and seeing what would happen on the other side and how much greater things would be on the other side, and realizing that I had to go through that thing, then when I was in the middle of these hard things that were happening to me, I could say something that I couldn't say in the beginning, which was sometimes through gritted teeth, but thank you, God, for what I'm about to go through, because I know it's about to change my life. And I said that,
Mm.
we just lost a pregnancy pretty far along, and I had to have a DNC, and it was terrible. And we'd seen the heartbeat, and the baby was fine, and all these things, and it was really hard. And even on the day where we showed up at that sonogram, and there was no more heartbeat, and I knew, gosh, I'm gonna have to walk this road again. I had faith in God, and I remembered the other side of all of those losses. That you know I lost 4 babies before I had my daughter, and when I look at my daughter, I would go through every one of those pregnancy losses once a year, every single year to get that child.
Mm.
I would, and I think that loss and hard things that happen in our lives, especially if we can see what happens on the other side, um, it's so much easier in a way. Losses are always hard, and it's still hard to go through terrible things, but you can know that, like, God is bringing me something greater on the other side. He has every single time. He has.
Mhm. So beautiful
Hmm.
to have that faith, even when you're going through stuff that does not make sense, doesn't have an explanation for it,
Hmm.
nothing anyone else can say,
No.
and just to have that undeniable faith through it.
Yep. Undeniable faith. And you know what? My sister had that too.
Mm.
Um, and she was the one that was like really in it. And I can still remember, like, after that happened and they took him off of life support, and we came back to their house, and like they had to walk out of a hospital without a baby. And she sat on her couch and she looked at me and she said, and I wrote about this in my book too. And it was like so hard to write that chapter, but I was like, I got to write about this. It's another hard thing that happens that people have happen in their lives. And I want to share this story. And the first thing she said was, she looked at me, and she hadn't lost her face. She looked at me and she said, do you feel like he's like a grown up angel or a baby angel in heaven?
Mm.
Like, she was still, she didn't lose her faith. It was really hard, and she was bawling, crying, and she was upset, and she was sad, but she did not doubt that the Lord was still up there.
Mhm.
And then she saw her baby up there. And I think that people's experiences are different at the end of loss, because some people are like screaming at God,
Mhm.
and some people lose their faith.
Mhm.
And I think that different people's journeys are different. And I just hope that they can find their way back to faith, that you can, because I do think that, like, you can be really angry at what's happening, and you can question your faith and come back around to it. I think that people's journeys are different. Maybe you don't feel like I did, and you haven't always felt the presence of God. But I also feel like this is something that I heard someone say to me when I was a really little girl, and I always prayed for it. I had a priest one time, and he said, you need to pray for hunger for God.
Mm.
Pray for hunger for God. And I was like, what an interesting prayer. And I started praying that when I was probably 10 years old. Like, I pray for hunger for God. And I pray to feel his presence in my life.
Yeah.
And I always did. And I think that maybe some people aren't praying that prayer. And I think that's a really great prayer to pray.
Good one to start.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
With does Kyle, your husband Kyle, share the same undeniable faith as well?
He had a different faith journey. He was so I was raised Catholic by a big Catholic family that we were in church every Sunday, and it was really solid. His mom was Baptist and his dad was Catholic, and he would alternate churches. And I think he has a really interesting faith perspective, because here's what I think. I think it does not matter what religion you are. I think if you believe in something greater than yourself, like, it is we are all, I think, trying to get to the same place. It's just all different roads. And so he saw something that I didn't have the opportunity to see, which was 2 like totally different faith walks, because there is a big difference, in the way that a Catholic mass is said and the way that a Baptist service is.
Mhm.
And whenever we got married, he made the choice to become Catholic, because we wanted to raise our kids in the same church, because I think that there is beauty in that, but I also think that it is nice to streamline that and to go to the same church on Sunday just as part of a community. But he always says and I'd had not just my husband, but people that I had like dated before whenever I was younger, that always said, your faith has made my faith stronger.
Mm.
And he always says that to me. He's like, the way that I am, and he prays as much or more than I do now. And he prays with our kids as soon as we get in the car on the way to school. And, I'll be like, gosh, I haven't been praying with them lately. I've been forgetting. He's like, I have. We pray on the way to school. Sometimes they pray for their pet turtle that is no longer living that they don't realize. But, goofy
Yeah.
little things. But like it has lifted his faith.
Mallory Ervin is a small town girl turned internet and entrepreneurial superstar. She's a best-selling author, an online mega influencer. She's also the founder of Living Fully Co.